Yo, Harrison, this is Vess. So, duels, heroes, okay. How do I feel about Champ? Champ is a pretty good hero that struggles a bit. Because they are, and this is the D&D term, multiple ability score dependent, or MAD. Uh, because this guy, you want strength for damage. You don't really want HP because that slows stuff down. You want haste, you want armor, you want speed, you want all of these things, which makes him not very good. He is excellent early on when there's not a lot of stats going on, because he can just haymaker somebody for 60 damage, and generally that kills them. He can teleport into the back line, and that generally kills them. But the main problem is later in the game, he isn't the best because he needs to get to the enemy to actually do that, and that takes him a while of continuous punching, which means he gets countered by Medusa, because Medusa stuns people. That stops his punches, and then he's unable to get a haymaker off. If you invest too much in him being able to do the attack quickly and actually get it off, then you lose out on the defense needed for him to live long enough to do it. And if you put too much defense on it, then it takes him too long to do the punch, and then he gets stunned. So later in the game, he's not very good because you have to choose between defensive but no punch, or punch but dies. Not good. I would say that Cyclops is just a better version, because Cyclops also has that one big hit, but it happens at the start, and it's ranged. Also, Cyclops has 4 armor, and additional HP based off strength, whereas Champ just doesn't, and you really need armor to be good. So that is my opinion on Champ. I would say that they are like an A... No... Like a... They can carry some, like, later tier units. Like, you can take a Champ and a Captain, and Champ will make sure you get to the point where Captain will be level 3. So you can take him with a unit that needs to be Rust, as just like a level 1, get your other guy up to max, and then sell him. But he's not the best in late game teams. Archer is okay. Baraz, nearly useless. Because with Archer, you are almost always building haste for more shots rather than strength, or you're doing on-hit effects. The Baraz just doesn't do a whole lot. It's no longer the oppressive one-shot the entire backline. So then what do they provide? They provide good block destruction, which is good against Knight. They are very heavily ranged, and they are good at that. Problem. Right now, teleport into backline and blow up is a good strat, and Medusa with Bouncy is a good strat. So, they tend to die. But, if you're not facing those, they can be a good DPS. I would say solid, like, B-tier hero. Imp is really good in low tiers, really bad in high tiers. Because in high tiers, let me put it this way. You do not need to give Imp more than one intelligence item, and then you can just focus on making him tanky, which makes him good. Because Imp provides inevitability, which would be good in a meta with, like, infinite heal and tank Krasis, or Viking, or, you know, frontliners. Problem, frontliners get counted by Medusa, so frontliners aren't really meta. Instead, you're more focused on having, like, one upfront unit just for the lulz, while you have an instant kill, or a backline teleport, or this, or some other means of just dealing a lot of big damage. So Imp isn't really good in the current meta, but if you buff him, then he could be absurdly strong in a later meta. So I would say he has potential, not good right now. Alright. Captain is alright. The problem is, if he dies, so does all of his boys, and he doesn't have a lot of survivability. He has good HP and good armor to start with. He has Inspire, which is decent, and Melee, which is not great. So the main thing to do with him is stick him in the back, and pray to God he lives while his nanas get some value. Problem is, he gets backline teleport blown up. This is like saying in Magic the Gathering, oh, it dies to removal, so it's bad. So I will try not to bring that up, but that is the current meta. So again, he would be good in a frontliner v frontliner situation where you get reoccurring value from his Nana's dueling damage and taking damage and being able to provide that stats. But right now, if you put him up front, he dies, so he's not really a tank. So you need to put him in the back. If you put him in the back, then he gets blown up. Not really a good situation. Wizard is good because you are almost always hitting more than one person. Usually like 3 or so. The Ice Wizard attacks really slow down frontliners and can freeze in 3 hits, making him really good at applying that debuff and making people take damage. And then the Fire version is just good because of the increased AoE. The Burn is also, like, okay. I'm not sure why it can get ridiculous, but it can for some reason, despite scaling really bad. But overall, I would say that Wizard is a good unit. They are kind of... If we need a unit to baseline balance around, Wizard is a okay one. Because you need to have a, this is what we expect a unit to be able to do. And if you take a unit and you pump it full of intelligence and it hits AoE, this is around the power level. You nerf Wizard, then who are you going to base ranged AoE on? Is it going to be Frost Witch, who is also a little bit of ranged AoE? Is it going to be Deep Cultist level 3? Is it going to be Cyclops' ranged AoE? Is it going to be your teleporting to the back with technically a ranged AoE? Is it your Frostwind AoE? You're way too short ranged, and you don't do AoE. He's kind of the only real AoE, and he's just kind of one of the few standard AoEs, and because he's part of the original cast, I would say that he's something to base around. Artificer, normally he would be pretty good, but with Medusa basically reducing the statue's HP, the turret's HP, 10 armor means that they are really good in the beginning, but then later in the game everything has 6 armor, so he's not the best. The fact that he stuns people can be really good, and the fact that he slows people is also really good. The problem is he loses to AoE, and there's a lot of good AoE currently. So, I like him. I think he's a good unit. A lot of people disagree, because you need him alive so that he can rebuild his turrets, but he loses all of his armor, dies, and then his turrets start going down. So, right now, I would say he's a subpar unit currently, but that's just because, again, frontliners aren't meta, so nobody's getting stunned by his turrets, and the turret explosions aren't really a major thing. Instead, he just gets blown up at range by other people. So, could be good in a future meta, not right now. He also takes a while to set up, and in that time, people are teleporting at the back and instant kill switching with one-hit KO, one-hit, well, that's not really used, but one-hit KO, really fast kills, AoE. So, yeah, not the best. Hoplite, I would say, is another good baseline unit. I would say more baseline than Knight, even. Hoplite is good because he breaks armor. He does decent damage even to enemies that have high armor, because going from 6 to 2 damage is not as big a problem as going from like 60 damage down to 20. He doesn't get too affected by damage reduction because he just hits fast. And his spear is decent at cleaning up low HP backline units, especially with his martial switch giving him that ability. I would say A tier unit. Now I don't see him too much because, again, frontliners aren't very meta, but I like him in the current state he's in. Ranger? The Wolf Companions don't really do much later in the game. They're kind of meant to scale with party item effects, but there's only the banners. Those are the only party item scaling, so they will always have 18 health. Now, Barkskin would, in theory, make them stronger. That doesn't really. So, yeah, no. They can do okay in the mid-game, where they, like, mark somebody and then all the wolves start dealing a ton of damage, but in the late game, not good enough. Especially not with 45 HP. You just die, unless you get, some other stuff on you. Sun is a multi-ability score dependent champ, so you would think he'd be bad. He's the opposite, because instead of requiring all these different stats to be good. He doesn't need anything. Champ, you need more damage of some kind to realistically deal with enemies taking 1/3 damage, because that's going to drop his 60 damage down to 20, and then he's not one-shotting anyone, and then he just walks away and does nothing. You kind of need haste, because otherwise it's going to take too many punches for him to be able to actually stun somebody. And you need him to have movement speed, otherwise he doesn't actually get there. Sun has far more effective HP, as he starts with 75 HP and 6 armor. I think that is the highest effective HP in the game. And he deals 12 damage per hit, which may very well be the highest in the game. That's higher than Ronin's base damage. And Ronin's supposed to be pretty strong. That's double the damage of Viking. And it's not even that slow. It's 1.5, which is the same as Viking by base. And it only gets stronger with haste. And it has 100% scaling. And then you cut over to Dusk Edge, which, in 3 seconds, also does 12 damage, but it's ranged this time. He literally doesn't lose DPS by going over to Dusk Edge. Granted, he does lose some armor, but by this point, he's already done what he's supposed to do, and now you're in cleanup. He hits people, he stays really strong, and then once he switches over, now he's hitting the backline range enemies that have been exposed, because the front line is presumably dead. If they aren't dead, well, when he's in level 3, he becomes invulnerable and applies some pretty nasty burn to them, which is pretty strong. So I would say Sun is an A-tier hero, because you can give him any item and he'll be stronger. Champ needs items to be stronger. You can probably win with just base Sun versus 3 other units. Not even joking. If you put Sun versus, I don't know, base Sun versus a rogue, an archer, and a Ronin, he'd probably win. Because he'd spend most of his hits on the Ronin, and then the Ronin would die first. And then he'd switch over to being in ranged mode, and then he'd make sure that the rogue couldn't actually go invisible, and then the rogue would die, and then he'd go and beat up the archer with, 3-ish, 4 hits. Yeah. Alright, next up is Paladin. I am recording, right? Yes, good. Paladin is now, I think, in a good place. People have said this, I agree with it. Changing his heal to a strong one is pretty okay. The main issue I see with it is that someone takes 4 damage, he heals them for 8, and now it's on cooldown for 6 seconds. But in theory, it's pretty good. The fact that it scales really well, and his melee even scales with it, makes him a rather good unit to put a bunch of intelligence and haste on, and he doesn't really need as much defense because of how tanky he is. Unlike Cleric, which sucks. Because most of the time when I'm fighting a Cleric, they either need 2 frontliners that are, one is rather weak, one is rather strong, the weak one dies, and then he brings back the weak one, and then the strong one dies, and then the weak one dies, and then the Cleric dies. Or literally any damage gets to the backline, and the Cleric dies. I think being able to make Cleric heal himself in duels wouldn't break the game. Usually in, Just King regular mode, it'd be broken because then he effectively has infinite HP. But in this version, I don't think it'd break too much. Cupid, I think, is honestly the most balanced Cupid has ever been. I would not touch him. Cupid can be used for a decent damage buff, can be used for decent damage, can be used for decent healing, scales well with haste, scales well with any sort of defense, and you don't really need to give him too much to make him good in terms of items, so you can give him defense without him just falling apart. Cleric, you can basically only give him defense, or he will fall apart. Ranger, you kinda need to give him defense, or he will fall apart. Imp, you can give him defense and he'll still kill people, which is a difference. Wizard, they can't kill you if they're dead, is the logic, because you're just strong enough to kill people if you buff him that much. Plague Doctor, I have had a couple of BS losses to Plague Doctor and really strong tanks, but I understand that that's more because I don't play with the best tank buster builds. I just play with whatever, and generally tank buster builds are able to get through. I like that he has synergy with summon builds. I like that he has synergy against summon builds. I like that he has healing. I like that his level 3 actually makes him scale pretty well with haste, because then he throws more bottles that do things. And overall, his heal is decent without being overpowered. It's definitely worth going for. That is a lot less than I thought it would be, honestly. Huh. I guess because it's just easier to get, they made it harder and made him focus more on being a DPS than on a healer, which is fair. Otherwise, he'd just become immortal. But he does scale a lot off of one single stat. You don't need to give him, like, strength and movement speed and HP and all this other stuff. You just give him intelligence, and he is able to heal himself better, able to kill people better, and you can give him, like, one defense item. Rogue is interesting, because everyone got armor, so the only people he can one-shot are these guys. And the only way to get him back there is a specific item. If Rogue does not have that specific item, they are trash. Because they are this guy, but with 2 less armor, and way easier to counter. Reminder, 6 times 5 is 30. 2 times 10 is 20. This scales with 35 with haste. This scales 100%. So, in theory, if I gave this guy 2 points of strength, well, let's do 3 points of strength that it goes up by about 1. Then his damage goes up by 11 on the stab. Now let's say I give you 3 strength. That goes up by 9, which means that, well, no. If I give you 3 strength, that goes up by just 3. And then 3 times 5, that's 15 extra damage. So, you scale better with it than he does, until, like, max level, and then you get 6 times 15, and it scales, and 6 times 18. But at that point, really okay. Someone do the math and tell me what a level 3 rogue fighting a level 3 sun would look like. Because I'll tell you, the sun would take like 5 damage from each swing, and rogue would get pummeled into the dirt. Kills refreshing stealth is a cool idea in theory, but rogue just does not deal the damage, and rogue should not do the damage. I would say, give rogue like 20% movement speed by base. If people can't have armor by base, give him 20% movement speed by base. That would help him get out of danger without getting constantly hit and locked out of being able to re-stealth. And that would solidify his role as being a frontline run-up, stab you, run away, as opposed to just teleport into the backline, pray he kills some people, and then he dies. Bard. Knight. Good stun. Not breakable with too much haste. It's basically a one-time thing that knocks people out of combat for 2 seconds. That can be really valuable. I like this. Reinforced armor. Make sure he gets up to the front so that he can do his stun. Very valuable. Cleave. Pretty bad on damage, but can clear out summons okay. So what does he do? He keeps your backline alive. And also gets rid of some stacks sometimes. And hits, like, a couple of people. I would say very well balanced, B tier. Hoplite is A tier balanced. You are B tier balanced. I like you where you are. Slayer can be very good in slow wall breaking teams where you're expecting this guy to lower enemy defenses and then kill them. Problem is, you don't need to lower enemy defenses with this guy. They just die anyways, and it generally takes a bit. So can he be good in like a slower meta? Yes. Is he good right now? No. Not at all. But I like him. And I'm not really sure what to do with him. Quite honestly, probably buff him from a 45 HP unit, because right now, You have 45 HP. You're a super far backliner. Look at the difference in the arrow right there. That is minuscule. Imp has 60 HP and has longer range. What the fuck is Slayer doing with 45 HP? Get this man like 60 HP and an armor. Stat. Berserker. Please. Just make it so that he has like 6% HP. So that he can still get countered by Poltergeist, but not deleted by Medusa. Because right now the most popular unit in the meta is making this guy unviable. You cannot have a Berserker on your team currently, because he would be really, really strong if he goes down to 1 HP and then heals 90 HP right back up and then gets damaged back down and then heals back up. He can be a legit immortal unit that is really busted. Honestly, I think you take Medusa out of the game, Berserker would be the strongest unit in the game with that 500% intelligence scaling, 100% intelligence scaling on Blood Boil, 30% intelligence, 30% base HP scaling. The only way to take this guy down would be insane, like Slayer or Burn comps. That would be the only way. The one thing keeping him from being overpowered is this unit. Remove this unit, Burrs becomes OP. Watch him prepare a hot fix for once Medusa gets nerfed. Because this will be busted. And everyone will be putting Poltergeist on their team to counter it. Which will then make it fair. Because there is an item to counter it. There's no anti-Medusa item. There's just Giffa. Alright. Next up, Biomancer. You're in a good state right now. You get Biomancer slow enough. You get Essence slow enough for you to not be overpowered, but you can still do decent, I think. Either that or you're weak. I don't care. I would need to mess with you some more. You've got 3 different forms, so you've got a lot of versatility. There's a lot to talk about. Why the fuck do you have 45 HP? Get this man 60 HP. That buff his Krasis a little bit and make it so that, well, I mean, you're already building tank on him, so making him more tank wouldn't really be necessary. But Biomancer is multi-ability score dependent. Do you build haste so that you can hit more shots so that you can get essence faster? Or do you build intelligence, that way you can have higher maximum essence count and more damage? Or do you build HP, which is a thing, or do you build armor for the other Krasis form? There's a lot of different ways you can build it. If you build it just haste, he dies. If you build it just intelligence, he dies. If you build him tank and intelligence, he's okay. If you build him with like higher maximum potential in a longer drawn out fight. If you go haste, then he will survive and do something before he dies. I think decent right now. Huntress, just better rogue, gives the entire party speed, really decent unit. Feels like maybe they deal a bit too much damage, but it has been a problem because everyone has such high armor. So even if this guy hits somebody for 30 HP, they're either going to get healed or they're going to need 4 more hits to actually die from it. If nerfs come to tanks, watch this guy. But for now, okay, I like him. Why does he have 3 armor? Right, because he kept dying before. I would say he's okay. Solid A. Keep him where he is. Wins 90% of 1v1s. Because you put Huntress against, like, Knight, he's going to win that. You put Huntress against Burrs, going to win that, I think. You put him against Rogue, probably going to win that. You put him against Plague, probably going to win that. Paladin, probably going to win. The only unit I don't think he solos is Sun, and that'd be a close battle. But put Huntress in a 1v1 against the entire cast, it's like maybe 2 units he loses to. Can really help carry a team. Plus that speed is pretty good with all the damn slows in the game. Druid. I like level 3 Druid. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe if you nerf the duration of the heal, that would actually be a buff. So instead of applying a heal that lasts for 6 seconds, make it last for 5 seconds. Then he's weaker early game, but later game he can apply the bark skin more often. That's my suggestion. Wolf, I think, got nerfed to the ground by making him require a 4th hit. to be able to do his chompy chomp hasn't been an issue. Turtle Druid stands there, everybody moves past him, then he's ready to fight, and by then the battle's already over, because your tank is not in the front. Turtle got nerfed hard, and honestly, I'm okay with it. If Turtle is your only tank, and everybody standing behind the Turtle while the Turtle preps, is good. Otherwise, kinda sucks. And if you have him with other melee units, he will knock the enemy units away from your melee guys and make it harder to kill them in the late part. And doesn't deal, like, any damage. Weirdly balanced. But balanced. Viking, I would say, is in a decent spot right now. Not doing overpowered things. Mostly because all Frost application got nerfed into the dirt. So it's not as present where he's making everyone lose their haste. He's still the best at it, but that's because he needs to be close to people. Whereas these guys, which were kind of making him overpowered with their support, Frost Witch got nerfed so that people are in her circle for less time due to less slow, and there's less application of it. And Cool Boy also got nerfed to apply less with his sots. So Viking indirectly got nerfed by that, along with his own nerf being applied, but I still think he's good. Cool Boy and Frost Witch, I think they're about as powerful as you can make them. I know people are calling for a Frost Witch buff. I would say that right now C's not doing good because Medusa is just Frost Witch but better in terms of being an AoE ranged unit that kills the backline. Frost Witch would normally be good at that, but the main thing is Signature Frost dealing 2 times damage to frozen enemies is never going to apply because it's so much slower to actually freeze people before that goes off. Before, everyone would get frozen in 0.5 seconds, and then Signature Frost would deal a ton of damage. Now it's not, because the units aren't actually frozen before it hits, and then it takes way too long for it to actually come online before she dies. So I would say maybe like nerfing the cooldown of Signature Frost Arrow to like 10 or 9 seconds. That way it can be used again and maybe hit people that are frozen, but it is awkward timing there. Weird to mess with, but probably worth it. Cool Boy, I dislike blowing enemies because it either does nothing or it does everything. I dislike Cold Stare being a one-hit, one-kill. I will leave balancing this unit to someone else. Deep Cultist, you were a sustain tank and then you lost all your armor and now you cannot sustain. Also, no scaling on the heal. It is always 3, so even in the late game, it is 3 heal. No, last place, be gone. It is already inconsistent to hit an enemy with all 3 of the tendrils, making your DPS awful. It is already really hard to get you to do anything. You're level 3, does basically nothing, because 3 tentacles spawn in and hit people for 4 damage. So you're getting 12 damage. Congrats, you did 12 damage. This bitch salted the earth in the time you were waiting for that. No. You could double this guy's damage, double this guy's healing, double his armor, and he'd still be bad. Give him his old ult back where he summoned some eyeballs that shoot balls at people, because the summoning 3 tentacles sucks. Alright. It used to be good because when you could move over to those tentacles and they would last, but they don't even last. They attack them once and then disappear, so it doesn't even do anything. Sarkmancer. Okay early game, but again, multi-ability dependent. You want to get haste, that way you can summon Sark more often. You want to get intelligence, that way you can sustain and heal your HP and armor. I genuinely think like 1 armor item, 1 intelligence item, and 1 haste item makes him pretty good. But then he doesn't deal a lot of damage. The main thing that comes up is his Sark, which doesn't have any armor. Do you know how easy it is to deal 30 damage in this economy? The sun one-shots the Sark. So I don't think it's a real problem. Lit is okay. I would say most balanced he's been. You are reliably able to get an orb. The orb is reliably able to do some damage. And I would say his self-healing is okay. The problem is, for him to be self-healing, he needs to have HP to heal. And he don't got that. One thing that's weird I've seen is that if the original Lit is one of the ones that dies, and is the last soul needed for the Phylactery, then the Phylactery spawns a Lit and the fight keeps going. Which I think is kind of a bug, but okay. Balanced. B. Oni. I genuinely don't know. I'd say they're decent. They're not overpowered. Not at all. But they also don't feel strong in the early game. And in the late game, they're having difficulty reaching the front line, so you kind of need to give them movement speed. But after that, just give them a bunch of strength and they'll be fine. Ronin, one of the least MAD dependent units, because you just give him strength and you give him a defense item and a movement speed item and he kills people. I have been losing to him. I haven't been using him. Probably could be okay. Especially with like a Dark Pauldron, so he can survive the first 5 seconds. The main problem is you die in 3. So, could be strong, but we don't know. Wukong is decent, I would say. You kind of need to build him for HP and rely on his inherent damage. But when he gets hit and he flies away, he is really fast. And the level 3 is also really strong. So I think he's in a okay spot. Cyclops throws a statue and then dies. Can deal like 60 damage. But yeah. Not a lot of people use him. I've heard he throws really, really fast though, so hopefully that one throw goes off really fast. I don't need to talk about these two. Enough has been talked about. You teleport to the back line and kill everyone, or, hear me out, you stay in the back and you force all of my backliners up to the front, where they then die to Wizard AoE. Yes, I have seen that. No, it is not fun. You also scale really well with Haste, because Haste makes your Diva Strike faster, and then your Diva Strike makes your back vocals faster, and your back vocals are also boosted by Haste. So you're already ridiculously strong. I would say, don't make her invincible during the Big So. Let her get killed, and let like one statue spawn every 0.5 seconds for the duration. So it's like, first half second, one statue, 1 second, a second statue, 1.5 second, another statue, 4th second, another statue, and she's vulnerable the entire time. So if she's in the backline doing it, no problem. It's just a wave of quick statues going up front. If she teleports into the backline, then she can be killed before all 4 of the statues blow up for 16 times 4 damage, times 80% of intelligence, which is ridiculous. And you can also put a blazing helmet on them with no fear of consequence. Medusa, likewise, make the sealed Gale with, like, strength or something. Medusa hits 5 times. If you have an intelligence thingy, 6 times. 6 times 12 is over 60 damage every second. How did that get through testing? 60 damage a second from Medusa, no items. Then you add this monster in, and that is an additional 4 times 5, that's an additional 20. That is 80 damage per second. And it increases haste, and it increases intelligence. On a unit that, while motherfucking Slayer out here is at 45 HP, at tiny range, you have 45 HP, and a giant barrier. So let's say hypothetically you get, oh, I don't know, a blazing helmet and a tome. You will have the same HP as you have now. Actually, no, more, because you will have 20 intelligence. Add that on to the 10. No, actually, you have more than 20 intelligence. My bad. Item pool. Let me find it. That gives 6, so that is a total of 12. So 12 plus 20 plus 10. That is... what? 12 plus 10 is 22 plus 20. That's an additional 44 HP. And every time you hit somebody, you get back part of your barrier. So every second you are regaining, let's say you're hitting, you have 26 intelligence at this point, so you're hitting 7 people. So you're getting 7 HP a second. Actually, let's throw on a twin lightning there, so that you have 0.5 second, and also I know the gauntlet takes it up by another 25%, so that's like every 0.45 seconds. You're regaining 7 HP, so that's more than Litz by almost double. You have more HP than Litz, and also if they do get through your 40 HP, then they have to deal with dealing 1 damage to you in several instances. And in the meantime, you are dealing, let's see, 12 plus 13 plus whatever the gauntlet scales to. Oh, and the snake is also moving at 16 speed. And also all opponents have minus 5% HP. And if by some miracle they survive for 5 seconds of, what was it, like 120 DPS at this point? 240? Something ridiculous like that. Then they get stunned. How do we nerf Medusa while keeping her fair? It's a difficult question. It really is. Oh, what am I talking about? It's not. If this motherfucker cannot scale HP healing with every goddamn level, make it so the snake only ever hits 3 targets. Then that cuts down their DPS by a crap ton, while keeping their niece of being insanely busted with everything else that's going on. So that way, there is at least 1 unit not getting blasted for 240 DPS. That fair? I think so. Also nerf Mind Fortress to 100% in scaling. That way Blazing Helmet is not just a buff to this hero. C'est la vie.